Today we're going to continue our topic of turning Friday into Erev Shabbos. And the last time we met, 2 weeks ago, we discussed the idea of bathing before Shabbos and how that helps remove all the past of a person, and it prepares you for the new perception and reality of what Shabbos is bringing. And it's very much connected to today's topic, which is wearing clothes special for Shabbos. And what's the concept of wearing clothes special for Shabbos? That's today's topic. So the Shulchan Aruch says a person should make efforts to have nice clothes for Shabbos, and they should be designated for Shabbos clothes. This is learned from a pasuk in Isaiah, where Yeshaya says, "V'chibadato me'asos drachecha." You have to honor the Shabbos by not engaging in your own affairs. And from this, the rabbis learned from that verse, how do you honor it? You honor it that your clothing of Shabbos is not like your Shabbos of the weekday. So the clothes that we're all wearing right now are clothes that we cannot be wearing on Shabbos. More than this, the Arizal in the Hidden Torah says that any type of clothing that you wear, from any of the garments that you wear during the week, you should not wear them on Shabbos. Meaning to say that it's not just your jacket, but everything. Whatever you wear on Thursday, on Friday, you don't wear any of that stuff on Shabbos. And as well, that which you wear on Shabbos, you should not wear during the weekday. So far we have the following. Whatever you wear during the weekday, that should not be the garments you wear on Shabbos. All garments you wear on the weekday, none of them should be worn on Shabbos. And whatever you do wear on Shabbos should not be worn on a weekday. That's the halacha. So now let's try to understand what is the spiritual significance of this. But we already can see some very important halachas. And you can see many Jews are not, many Orthodox Jews are not particular about this. Some people, they're wearing let's say they're wearing their suit and jacket they wear to work. And on Friday, at the rushing late, they come with the same suit and jacket to work, to Shul. You can't do that. Some people feel that, let's say, when you come home from Shul, you could change into your weekday clothes, because you're in your house. That's not true either. The entire Shabbos, you should wear Shabbos clothes. Okay? It's not just getting dressed up because you're going to Shul. It's not an aspect of, of course, there is an aspect you should be dressed nicely to go to Shul. You shouldn't go to Shul in your overalls. Okay? But there's nothing to do with Shul. It's not a Shul aspect. Say, well, on Shabbos I go to Shul. Some people, the only day of the week they go to Shul is on Shabbos, want to be dressed up to go to Shul. Which is nice. But that's not what we're talking about here. You're getting dressed up for Shabbos. And therefore, when you come home from Shul on a Shabbos afternoon, you still keep on your Shabbos clothes. Keep your Shabbos clothes on the whole time. Okay, if you're going to take a nap, maybe that's different. But you're wearing the Shabbos clothes. This also has implication for women. Women on Friday night who do not necessarily go to Shul, they may say, I don't have to get dressed up for Shabbos. And that's not correct. Some women figure, let me just hurry and light the candles, and while I'm waiting for my husband to come home from Shul, then I'll get dressed up. That's also not correct. You have to be dressed up before the Shabbos comes. So when Shabbos is there, you're already dressed up. So by the time a woman is lighting Shabbos candles, she already has to be dressed for Shabbos, because as soon as she lights the Shabbos candles, it's Shabbos. So, there has come into a style in the religious communities that women have, called very fancy Shabbos robes. So, I don't know if that really fits into the spirit of Shabbos. Because, okay, I understand you're wearing a Shabbos robe as opposed to a weekday robe. But again, is Shabbos the kind of day that you wear a robe to the Shabbos table, as opposed to being dressed up? I don't imagine any woman would go out with her Shabbos robe to a wedding. Right? Because it's important. So why would one wear a Shabbos robe to the Shabbos table? It's not right. Now, I understand you're going to bed. Okay, put on a Shabbos robe. You're going to bed. You're going to be sitting in bed. You want to read a little bit. Okay, you have to go from bed to the bathroom. You're going to put on your Shabbos robe. Makes a lot of sense. But to bring a Shabbos robe to the table, be questionable if that is honoring the Shabbos properly. Now, you are wearing special clothes. You only wear that robe on Shabbos. True. But is that would really be befitting the cover of Shabbos would be questionable. But anyway, that is the practical halacha. But now you have to understand, what does this practical halacha do in terms of our consciousness of Shabbos and how we should be attuned to the Shabbos, to the inner dimension of the Shabbos. This is what we have to understand. But it is clear that after you have... Okay, so we'll explain. So now, we want to understand what's the significance of Shabbos clothing. What do we have to analyze, like we've been doing in the past? We have to analyze what is the spiritual significance of clothing in general. Why do people wear clothes? Just like we talked about, why do people bathe and shower and all the things we talked about every week? We have to understand, why is it that people wear clothes? And therefore we have to come to the origins of clothing. First time the Torah talks about clothing. Now there's two types of words that are associated with clothing. One is called to be lovesh, which means to put on clothing. Lovesh, a lavush. And the other word for clothing is beged. So you have to look at where the Torah mentions first the idea of lavush, to put on a garment, and then when does the Torah mention the first time about a garment? So we're told that after Adam and Eve sinned, it says, Hashem made for the man and his wife sonas or garments of skin, leather garments. Vayal bishem, and he clothed them. That's the first time it says in the Torah. The first time the Torah mentions the word beged as a garment, it says Rivka took the big day Esav. She took the garments of Esav, her older son, which were called the big day hachamudos, the coveted garments, which was in his house, and she gave them to Yaakov to steal the brachas. Those are the first two times we're introduced to wearing clothes and the specific definition of clothes, which is called beged. So let's understand, what does the word beged mean? The Hebrew word beged, beis, gimel, daled, means clothing. But is there not a deeper meaning to the word clothing? So what other word, a very famous word, has the root beis, gimel, daled? So we say it during the high holiday period. We say Ashamnu, and then Bogadnu. Beis Gimel Daled, Bogate. And what does that mean? Ashana means we sin. What does Bagadnu mean? We betrayed. Betrayal. Bigida means a betrayal. As it says a little bit later on, when Yaakov had these garments, it says Yitzchak smelled, Vayerach esreach begadov, he smelled the smell of his garments. And the rabbis say, don't read it as garments, don't read it as bigadav, but bogdav, his betrayers. That Yitzchak prophetically was able to see in the future that the person who's wearing this garment will have descendants that will be betrayers of Judaism. Excuse me. So you see that the word garment has the same root as betrayal. So what do garments have to do with betrayal? Okay, that's what we have to discuss over here. As well, let's talk about this garment. Let's talk about these garments that Esav had. What were these garments that Esav had? Where did they come from? So the Gemara tells us they're called bigdei chamudos. So Rashi there says they were the ones, the coveted garments, the ones that Esav coveted from Nimrod. Nimrod had garments, and Esav killed Nimrod to get those garments. Where did those garments come from that Nimrod has? So Rashi in the Gemara Pesachim says these were garments that originally were worn by first man. It's the clothes of first man. And that was the coats that God, the clothing that God gave first man after he sinned. It's that very same garment that somehow got into Nimrod, the wicked Nimrod's hands. And Esav killed Nimrod and got those garments as well. And after he became a hunter, it was very unusual garments. It was a garment that had woven within it pictures of animals. Looked lifelike. and other animals would be attracted to it, and that's how we were able to hunt the animals. So, and Rashi says that these garments were of first man, and that was the kosnas, or the garments of skin, of leather, that Hashem made for first man. So what do we see about this first introduction of garments in the Torah? It has an expression of begidah, of betrayal. It came to Esav through a betrayal that he killed Nimrod. And according to the other interpretation, it's the very first clothing of man. And how did the first clothing of man come? It came because he sinned. So therefore we see both the expression of lavush, of garmenting, which relates to first man, is the connection to the word beged, which means betrayal by Esav. It's all connected. The point being, clothing became necessary as a result of man's first sin. And therefore it really means when man first sinned, it was a betrayal against God. So clothes are a result of man's betrayal of Hashem. And that's where the word beged comes from betrayal. Now, let's look at the root of the word lavush. Lavush is another word for a garment. Lavush is a word for a garment. The Gemara says lavush is an acronym. It's a consolidation of two words. Lavush is lo, no, busha, shame. Lo, busha, lavush. No shame. After Adam and Eve sinned, they were lacking clothes. It says they were ashamed. So now when you put on the clothes, the shame went away. So lavush, you put on clothing, so there's lo busha. There's no shame to the first man. So the question now has to be asked, so why is a person ashamed they don't have any clothes? So the simple meaning is, because you don't have any clothes, it reminds you of the situation we're at after the first sin. And at that point when the man first sinned, that's when him and his wife recognized they were unclothed. And they were ashamed. And therefore you have to put clothes on to cover that shame.
Where does the word kleider come from? Isn't it?
That's Yiddish.
But this is not connected?
Kleider, I don't know. It's a Yiddish word for... I don't know.
No, because a lot of Yiddish words...
I know. I don't know the etymology. I haven't thought about that. Yeah. It's similar to the word clothing. I mean, so I'm not sure. So wherever the Gemara says, for example, a person who, there's nothing more disgusting and repulsive to God than a person who goes without any clothes in the marketplace. Because such a person, doesn't even dawn on him that there's anything wrong with going without clothes. It means he's not even conscious of the very first sin that man ever did. Right? So we're beginning to see that clothing has a certain negative association to it. Do you understand? In a perfect world, you wouldn't need clothes. Clothing is a result of terrible imperfection that man brought into the world. So we'll have to see somehow that's going to fit into the idea of us changing clothes before Shabbos. Something has to change as well. So let's take this a little bit deeper now, and let's look at this interestingly. Before first man and woman sinned, the Torah says the two of them were arumim, unclothed, v'lo yisposhashu, and they were not ashamed. They were not ashamed when they were unclothed. So it appears that they didn't have any clothing before they sinned. No need to have any clothing. But the truth of the matter is, the mystics tell us that everything in this world must be enclothed. Everything has to be enclosed in this world. And even first man, who had no clothing, they had clothing. Let me explain. Let us say, for example, a human being is sent in a rocket to go to the moon. Now, the human being, physical body, what must the human being wear in order to live in space? A spacesuit. Why? Because human being, there's no air in space, for one. The atmospheric conditions are such they don't allow a human being to live in space. So what happens? The human being has to make a space suit. He puts the space suit on, Now he can live in an environment that is not suited for him, but the spacesuit enables him to still live in that environment that's not suited for him. We all understand that, right? So let's do the opposite now. A soul, a neshama. Where is the home? The natural home of a neshama? It's up next to God, by the kisei hakavod, by the throne of glory. That's where all the souls are made. And a soul's healthy environment is to live right there next to God. However, Hashem sends the soul on a very important body. Mission control. Up in heaven. Says, soul, so-and-so, you have a job, you have to go down to planet Earth. And the soul says, but the atmospheric conditions of planet Earth are not suitable for a soul to live there. A soul, per se, cannot live on planet Earth. Cannot. Why not? It doesn't have, we'll call, the spiritual oxygen. The conditions, the atmospheric conditions on planet Earth are not such that enables a soul to live on planet Earth. Plain and simple. So what did God do? So God, He created an earth suit. Not a space suit, an earth suit. To enable the soul to live in this world. And what was the earth suit that God created for the soul? The human body. The human body is the spacesuit. So just like we'd use a Miller's analogy, a human body is to a spacesuit as a soul is to an earth suit or a human body. So when man was first created, the neshama, the holy neshama that could not live on planet Earth, was put into an earth suit called a body. So if you think about it, was the soul wearing a garment? Yes. What was the garment? The body. The body was the garment for the soul. That's how God created the human being. So now, let's say, for example, this table. This table here does not have a tablecloth on it. Would I be correct in saying that the table is naked? Would I be correct in saying the tablecloth is unclothed? Would that be a correct statement? No, would not be correct at all. Why? Unclothed or naked implies something that should be covered that isn't covered. A table works fine. It doesn't need to be covered. There's no need to cover the table. Okay, if you want to honor the Shabbos and put a tablecloth on top of it to beautify it, that's something else. But the table itself functions fine. There's no such thing as an unclothed table, because a table doesn't need any clothing. A soul, so to speak, is like a table insofar, or better yet, the body, or let's say better, a jacket. Does my jacket need to have clothing on top of it? No, because it is clothing. Can you imagine how foolish it would be to clothe your clothing? Wouldn't that be foolish? I'm going to put a jacket on my jacket. Why? Because my jacket's naked. What are you talking about? The jacket serves as a covering, doesn't need to be covered. So now you can understand. If the human being is a neshama, human being is a soul, that's who you are. The body is the earth suit of the neshama. So could you ever say that an earth suit is naked? It's not. It is all it serves, the only function it serves is a covering for the neshama, to enable the neshama to spiritually thrive in an environment that is not suited for a neshama. You with me? So therefore, the first man and woman, they had no clothes on, but they were not ashamed. Why? Because they totally understood the emes, that they are souls that require spacesuits, earth suits, and therefore nobody was unclothed. God comes along and says to the first man, you may eat all the beautiful fruits and everything in the world, but you cannot eat from the Eitz Hadas, from the forbidden fruit. Because if you will eat from the forbidden fruit, it will bring a concept of death to the world. Now, in the simple meaning, it means you will now bring mortality to the world, which is true. But what's the deeper interpretation? Interpretation is that as long as a person is in touch with his soul and lives with the reality of who he is, you are really a soul, and that's who you are. And if you live as a soul and everything you do in your life is based on that you are a soul and what a soul has to do in this world, you're in touch with reality. We can say you are fully alive. But if you will make the mistake and eat from the forbidden fruit to do something that is a betrayal of what God wants you to do, then you obviously are no longer focusing on your soul as being the essence of who you are. And you are not recognizing that as who you are. If all of a sudden a physical pleasure that God says you cannot have is something that dictates your behavior, that means you identify more with the body, that's the source of the drives for physical pleasure, than the soul. Now, we have a very sophisticated earth suit. It's a very sophisticated earth suit. It's not like a Stam spacesuit. Spacesuit just covers your body, gives you oxygen, that's it. The earth suit does a lot more. The earth suit is something from which you eat through. Remember, a soul does not need to eat per se. The earth suit is a very complicated suit, and part of it has to eat, has to do all kinds of things. And the earth suit is inherently benign, but if you get tangled up with the Yetzer Hara, then that earth suit's going to be all kinds of problems for you. It's going to want things that you shouldn't want, things that will be bad for you. So when man ate from that forbidden fruit, he said, you know what, I ate because my earth suit wanted it. And man made a horrific mistake. He identified his being with his earth suit. And he figures the earth suit is what I am, and that's the needs that I have. And God says, because of that, you've identified with your body and not with your soul. You've created a terrible schism, a break. And now you're no longer identified with your soul. And you're identified with your body. You've changed the function of the body. The body was meant to be an earth suit. And now you've turned the body into a being that becomes a central focus in your life. And if that is the central focus in your life, after eating the Eitz Hadas, and as the rabbi said, which put into the human being psyche imagination, and would give the human being perceptions that are not as real as a soul would perceive things. At that point, when the human being sees himself as a body, then he feels that that body now is something that needs to be covered. You see? As long as human beings saw the body as an earth suit, who needs to cover an earth suit? Who needs to put a jacket on top of a jacket? But the human being fell in level and now ascribed primacy to the body itself, and the body itself is the focal point of my life. Then all of a sudden, whoa, everything's got to be covered. And the neshama's got to be covered. Everything must be covered for existence. And if not, then it's being exposed. And there's a general shame of one being exposed. So just like there's a shame for a soul to be exposed, therefore it's covered up in a body, so the body does not want to be exposed. And the exposure that a body feels is much more shameful than that of a soul. And therefore, if you are at least a proper moral person, you can say, I better put some clothes on. Because now my focus on the body has now invested and brought a perception of sensuality to my body, which needs to be covered. And therefore the clothing is a manifestation of the ultimate betrayal that man had against God. He betrayed what his body and soul relationship was. The soul was supposed to be the main person, the main object of identity. The ID, ask Adam, give me your ID. My ID, I'm soul number one. My wife, she's soul number 2. That's my ID. What are these bodies? Spacesuits, earth suits. Also, man eats from the forbidden fruit. He changed his ID. His ID became here. My body, I'm man number 1. My wife is woman number 2. That's the essence. That's my new essence, and that essence better be covered. And if it's not, I'm ashamed. So now you put clothes on. Clothing is a necessary requirement to a person who has accepted and taken on a false identity. There's a real identity and people who go around with false identities. You know, your name could be Joe Schwartz. You get a different ID and it says Sam Green. You take on a new identity. You call yourself Sam Green, but you're not. You're Joe Schwartz. It's false identity. So a person that thinks he's a body and not a soul, it's a false identity, which is horrific, because if you don't know who you are, then your whole focus in life is not based on what your purpose of life is, and you're not even focused on your purpose of life. With me? So therefore, clothing is something that is a necessary, what do you want to say? A necessary repair for a person who has a false identity. As long as you're walking around and think I am the physical being that I am, and that's my primary identity, you have to cover that up with a body. And therefore, and the body will now cover up the shame that you felt when you first did that sin. That is the purpose of a garment. Okay? You with me so far? Does this make sense? Now, the truth of the matter is, what happens now, after 120 years, a person dies. A person dies. Now you're going to understand something beautiful here. A person dies. Now, the body now, the soul leaves. Well, soul leaves, it doesn't need an earth suit anymore. It's going back to Shemayim. Does it still need to be clothed? Yes. The soul still needs to be clothed. Everything needs to be clothed. Question: what will be the clothing of a soul after you die? Good question. So the Zohar answers, you know what the clothing that you have is? What do you think? The mitzvahs that you do in this world are the garments to the soul. And just like there are 3 levels of soul, from nefesh, ruach, and neshama, so too there's 3 modes of doing mitzvahs that relate to each one of the levels of soul, which is action, speech, and thought. All relate to the 3 levels. Every time I do a mitzvah, I'm putting a garment on my lower level of soul, nefesh. Every time I speak about mitzvahs, I daven and say good words, I'm clothing the level of ruach. Every time I think about good things, I'm clothing the level of neshama. So when I come back to the next world, I have beautiful garments, honorable garments of the beautiful soul that I have. With this, I just thought of it this minute now. That's why it could be, we say, the whole question is, well, if you're a soul up in Shemayim, why does God have to send you down to begin with? Just stay up in Shemayim. It's pretty good up there. It's pretty good up there under the throne of glory. Why are you going to be sent down? Said Lutzado, because when you're up there and you're enjoying being close to God, it's called Nahama de Kisufa, bread of shame. You're shamed. Why? Because you're getting something you don't deserve. You're being next to God and you don't do anything to deserve it. You're in a state of shame. There's a soul there, an unclothed soul, as is created, like a baby who's born. A newborn baby's got no clothes. A newborn soul has got no clothes. It's got no clothes. God says, I want to send you down to earth. You go down to earth. I'm going to give you an earth suit. Do mitzvahs. And make yourself a brand new suit so when you come back, you have something to wear when you're up in Shemayim. And now, when you're going to be close to me, you don't have to be ashamed because you've earned your reality. You with me? So just like a human being, a physical human being without clothes should be ashamed of himself when you identify with your body, because if your prime with what you identify is not covered, then there is shame. Well, way before you were born, your neshama was in a shameful state. Your neshama Shemaim had no clothing. In other words, meaning to say it had no way to justify its existence. It's just there. And Hashem is giving it all kinds of pleasure by feeding into it and being close to it. And the soul saying, I'm so embarrassed. I'm naked. I don't have anything to show for myself. I need to garment myself to make myself worthy. Hashem says, fine. How are you going to make yourself worthy? Go down to planet Earth, but you can't go that way. Soul can't come to this world. You just can't. Got to give you an Earth suit. Please don't make a mistake. Don't think that the Earth suit is your main thing. You make that mistake, it's going to be terrible. Now do mitzvahs, come back, and you'll have beautiful garments. Beautiful, beautiful garments. What happens if you do Averos? If you do Averos, that means you're putting on filthy clothes. Filthy clothes. And you go up to Shemayim with stinking clothes, which is not the way you want to be dressed before Hashem. That's what the Zohar says. Okay, so we've got that. All right, so where are we up to so far? So the fact that human beings wear clothes today is only an admitted fault of human beings who suffer from the sin of first man, says we all identify with our bodies. Plain and simple, that's the way we are after man's first sin, and our minds have been distorted from the Eitz Hadas. We think our body's the main thing. Our body's the main thing. You've got to cover it up. You put on clothing, you cover it up. You're not ashamed of that first sin. So therefore, wearing clothes becomes an issue of tznius, of modesty. You have to cover up that body. Okay. So now, so far so good? Well, let's add on another little bit more now. The Gemara says like this: the clothing that a person uses when he cooks for his master should not be the clothing he uses when he pours the wine to him. In other words, you have different kinds of servants. You have servants in the kitchen, and you have the servants who are the waiters and the waitresses. The guy, the chef is going to have filthy clothes because he's making the food and patching around and gets grease and grime and all kinds of stuff. You know, can you imagine the chef who has all dirty clothes because he's doing work he's supposed to do. And then you come to the king with your dirty clothes and go give him the main course. It's not nice. So you have to change the clothes. So it comes out really, now we see there's three types of clothing that can exist. We have the clothing of the garments of the soul that come from Averos, which are dirty, filthy clothes. You should never wear them. You should never put them on to begin with. But we put on these clothes all the time. You know, when a person does an Avera, it's like, you know, what do we know about clothes? Clothes, something you take on, you put on, take off, put on, take off, put on, take off. A person gets angry, he's putting on the clothes of anger. You get angry, you're putting on a new set of clothes. It's not a very nice set of clothes, pretty dirty clothes. Yelling and screaming at your kids means you're putting on the clothes of anger. You should never wear those clothes, but you may be wearing them. If you're sinning, you're going to have dirty, filthy clothes. Then we got clothing that they're dirty, but not because I'm a bad person, but it's because I'm just engaged in cooking for the king. Right? And that could be all kinds of things. How about if I go to work every day? You know, so I'm going to be involved in all kinds of activities that, you know, it's preparing me for other things, and it could get dirty in the process. Wouldn't say that's dirt from an Avera. And then we have what we call holy clothing. Clothing that illuminates, clothing of mitzvahs. And that is what we will call the clothing of Shabbos. Why? Shabbos, we know, the Zohar calls Shabbos the day of the soul. Shabbos is the day of the soul. It's the day that a human being is capable of coming in contact and being able to identify more readily with the holy soul that they have. When you identify with the holy soul that you have, you are hopefully garmenting yourself in a way that you garment yourself differently the other days of the week. The other days of the week, you may be wearing one or two sets of clothing. You could, God forbid, be wearing clothing that's dirty and disgusting because you've decided to do a lot of Averos. And that's very dirty clothing. Those clothing, you want to get them washed way before Shabbos. You want to get them washed as soon as possible. Then you got other clothing where where, the fact that you have to go to work is only because you think you're a body. Remember, first man did not have to go to work. Why? Because he knew he was a soul. And a soul is a holy being. The body is an earth suit. And God says, you don't got to spend a lot of time taking care of an earth suit. When man thinks that his body is the main thing, then all of a sudden the body needs to get a lot of care, has to be taken care of it. God says, if the body's an earth suit, I have enough to do maintenance on an earth suit, just eat the fruits in the garden. But now that you think that you're a body and you're not a person, I can't keep you in the Garden of Eden. And now you got to do all kinds of things to take care of your earth suit, your body. And therefore, the fact that we work, we're not going to say it's sinful, but it's indirectly something you have to do because of that original sin. And therefore, even when you work during the week, whatever you do during the week, because you still think you're a body, no matter what you do, it is somehow focused to the needs of the body, and that is the false identity that we go around during the 6 days of the week. Even if you're doing mitzvos. But there's always this feeling that somehow it's good for me. You could eat a good, all kinds of things are good for me. I could eat a steak. It's good for me. For me, who's the me? My body, my consciousness. That's one thing. Some people give tzedakah. Why? It feels good. It feels good. I feel good when I give tzedakah. Still not necessarily something that's engaged with the soul. What about a Jew who says, I'm doing a mitzvah, it feels good because I know I'm going to Olam Haba with this. It's still being processed through a body focus. Because it's in it for me. You have to remember the big difference between a soul and a body. What's in a soul and a body? A soul is focused not on itself. A soul is a giver. A soul is focused on God. The last thing the soul is focused is on itself. A body is totally focused on itself. Now when the body is an earth suit, then it's neutral. An earth suit is neutral. God said when you eat from the forbidden fruit, you will turn your earth suit into something that thinks it's the main thing, and it needs something. So now, when a person thinks they're a body, which they do think for 6 days of the week, then no matter what you do, it's going to have self-interest. Doing an Aveira will be self-interest. That's a really filthy suit you're going to put on that body. Even going to work to make parnasa because your body needs it. Or even if I am doing mitzvahs. It's because my body says, I don't want to burn in hell. I want to get a nice... as long as you... Whenever you answer anything about Judaism, of why you're doing it, and you say the words I, why are you putting on tefillin? Why are you giving tzedakah? Why are you going to the mikveh? Because I will go to Olam Haba. I will feel spiritually charged. As long as there's an I statement there, it is not a soulful statement. It's something that comes from a body. A body knows the word I. A soul does not know the word I. There's no such word I for a soul. The soul knows it's a portion of God on high. And it's always Him, not I. So 6 days of the week, you're living for yourself on one level or another. Now the garments may not necessarily be filthy, dirty, insofar as I've been sinful, but it's just like you're cooking a meal. You still get dirty. There is still a dirt, meaning what is dirt? Dirt covers up the genuine beauty of something. What's wrong with dirt? What's wrong with a dirty shirt? Shirt functions, covers up the beauty of the shirt. Right? So when you get involved in things for your own self, it covers up the beauty of the neshama that really is there. So you're getting dirty. So that's what happens in the 6 days of the week. That's the curse of the 6 days of the week. Now Shabbos is the day of the soul. If Shabbos is really the day of the soul, if that's what it really is, then you have to identify with the soul and not with the body. And for such a day to happen, all your statements have to change from being I statements to rather be Him statements. Focus on Hashem, focus not on yourself. So if Shabbos is the day of the soul, then what by definition has to happen is really, in the truest sense, your clothing that you wear during the week cannot be the same clothing that you're wearing on Shabbos. clothing on during the week are called bigadim. They reflect the betrayal of your own essence. It's not just a betrayal to God, it's a betrayal to yourself. If you are really a soul, and you're letting the body take over, the body is betraying the soul. Can you imagine if a spacesuit, can you imagine a science fiction thriller? The spacesuits in NASA turn against their masters and become the people. Well, that would be bizarre. But it's not so bizarre, because that's what first man did, and that's what people do all the time. They let their earth suits betray their masters and say that we are the main thing, and the soul is not important. So we live in a world of betrayal, and those clothes reflect that betrayal. Those clothes, and we don't have a choice, because we can't do anything else. If we don't put clothes on, it's even going to be worse. It's going to be worse. It means we're not even embarrassed for what we did. We're embarrassed for the betrayal. So now comes Shabbos. So theoretically, but we can't. Remember, first man's sin will never be corrected until we get to Olam Haba. Till there's death of all man, resurrection of all dead bodies, then we can come back to the Gan Eden state of life. But until then, we're not going to get there. So don't you ever think for a minute you're going to go without any clothes, even if you're a righteous person. Since there's a certain body identity, no matter how holy you are, the biggest tzaddik in the world, still, to some degree, thinks he's a little bit of a body. So we're always going to have to cover up our bodies. That's no question. But the point is, what do we cover it with? So that's what the rabbi said. So since Shabbos is the day of the soul, we are now trying as much as possible to wear clothing that is a garment of the soul. So the truest garment of the soul would just be the body. But we can't do it now. Our minds are so distorted. No matter what we do, we still are going to think the body's something. So we can't just say, the body has become the earth suit, and now all Orthodox Jews go with no clothes on Shabbos because we've come to the state of first man before sin. We can't do that anymore. It's not possible. The damage is too great. But we can approximate. So how do we approximate? Well, the way you approximate is, these clothes that I wear on Shabbos, I will never wear on a weekday. To show you that I am covering up something different. Today, on Thursday, we are covering up our bodies. We are living the life of a betrayal. And that's just the way life is, because we all think our bodies are important. If I would put those same clothes on that you're wearing today, and you put them on Shabbos, then you're saying the same thing, that the body still is primary. And I'd still be betraying. But that's not what Shabbos is. Shabbos is a taste of the world to come. There's going to be a world to come. There is going to be a world to come. The world to come means we're just souls. When we will just be souls, and we will be in Olam Haba, we will not have clothes in Olam Haba. No, we won't. What will we have? Bodies. How is the body like this body? Close. Not exactly the same, but there will be a physical body. You'll have physical bodies. But right now, your physical body seems so primary. In the next world, the body will be strictly understood as a garment. But that's the next world. Shabbos is a taste of the world to come. So how do I taste it? I have to understand that really my soul this is the day of the soul. It's the day I can come in much more contact with the soul. Can I be totally at one with my soul? No, that's not until Olam Haba. But therefore, the type of clothing I wear has to indicate that there is a change of focus. And therefore, if I recognize that I am a soul, even though it's not total and perfect recognition, but I wear clothes that are only worn on the day of the soul, and not on any other day. And that's why the Zohar says, the Arizal says, you cannot wear Shabbos clothes on the rest of the week. Because would the man who is the waiter, who has the beautiful fancy tuxedo, who hands the thing to the king, would he go into the kitchen and start patching around with the meatloaf and get dirty? No. So you can't take those Shabbos clothes, as it were, and get them dirty. You have to reserve them exclusively for Shabbos. And that's what the Zohar says. You can't wear any of the clothes from the weekday on Shabbos. Any. What do you mean? I'll just put the jacket. I'll put my Shabbos jacket on, but my weekday shirt. No. What does it mean you have to wear totally different clothes? So he gives an analogy like this. Let's say a child. A child's 10 years old. Can he wear his father's clothing? The child is 4'8", the father is 6'5". Can the child wear his father's clothing? No. How about if the child wears his own jacket but his father's shirt? No, you can't wear any of your father's clothing because none of it fits. So that's what the Zohar is saying. You can't wear any clothes from the weekday because none of it fits. You know why? Because you're a whole different individual come Shabbos. There's a whole new reality. It's the day of the soul. And therefore everything has to match what you're wearing in the day of the soul. Now, not everybody has to wait till Shabbos to dress this way. Interesting Gemara. Gemara says a Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, who has a stain on his garment is Chayiv Misa, deserves to die. How do you understand that? The answer is a Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, he understands and he identifies with his soul. Not just on Shabbos. He elevates himself that every day is like Shabbos. Every day is like Shabbos. So if every day is like Shabbos, then his dress has to reflect a Shabbos kind of a dress. All 7 days of the week. Of course, on Shabbos he'll still have a nicer one, but on the other days it's like Shabbos. And therefore, just like you wouldn't have a Shabbos suit with a stain on it, he has to make sure not to have any stains during the week. Because if he has any stains during the week, what does that mean? What does stain mean? That means I was engaged in this world for the sake of this world, in itself for its own goal, and that's not the way a scholar is supposed to live his life. If you're ready, just like on Shabbos, you can't wear your Shabbos clothes in a weekday situation. The tzaddik doesn't live weekday life like we live weekday life. The Shabbos never goes into the kitchen to cook. The tzaddik is always in touch with his soul and is always thinking of God and others and never thinking about himself. So the stain really means putting on a garment that like the cook gets his garment dirty. You're focused on yourself. A tzaddik can never be focused on himself. Once you start focusing on yourself, that means you don't identify with the body anymore, the soul. Once you stop identifying with the soul, by definition, that is called death. Remember, the Torah says at the end of Deuteronomy, I give before you life and death, good and evil, therefore choose life. How can anybody choose life? How do you choose life? How do you choose it? So we said, the answer is, you always have an opportunity every day to live by the dictates of the soul or live by the dictates of the body. A soul is eternal. A soul is selfless. Soul has eternal existence. You do what the soul says, you've eternalized the very next minute of your life. A body is finite and finished. If you listen to what the body says, then you've destroyed the minute. Life means living by the dictates of the soul. When a Talmud Chacham goes with a stain on his garment, it means to say he doesn't appreciate the fact that he's living with a soul. Just like on Shabbos, if Shabbos comes and you're wearing a weekday clothes, what are you saying about yourself? That today is no different than Wednesday. If you wear the same clothes on Shabbos you do on Wednesday, what are you saying? Instead of saying, I'm disrobing, just like when a person dies. When a person dies, what's he doing? He is disrobing the garment of the clothing over the body because re-identifying himself as a soul, which now needs new clothing. Mitzvahs. Shabbos, when you move into Shabbos, that's like death. What do I mean? That's why there's a custom. The custom also, which we're not going to learn, there's no chapter in the book for it. There's a custom to take a nap on Erev Shabbos. Why do you take a nap on Erev Shabbos? Because a nap is 1/60th of death, says the rabbis. It's 1/60th of death. Certain levels of your soul leave. So now what has to happen is, now listen well, what happens when a person dies? Dying is the most glorious moment in a person's life. Why? Because at the moment you die, that clothing that you wore, that covered your body, because you identified your body as the prime aspect of your life, all of a sudden comes a wondrous discovery that my body is not the primary aspect of who I am. My soul is the aspect, and I have to wear a whole different suit of clothes. It's the clothes of mitzvahs that have to enclose my soul. Right? That's what happens on the day of death. Day of death, you get a new wardrobe. Why do you get a new wardrobe? Because you have a new identity. Remember that false identity? The false identity? The body person you are had false clothing, had betrayal clothing. Now you get a true identity. The true identity is in the neshama. They need true clothing. True clothing of the mitzvahs that you do. So now, Shabbos is going into the world to come. Well, you can't get into the world to come unless you die. So how do you have a taste of the world to come? By having a taste of death. What's the taste of death? Sleep.
And that's every night.
True, but at night you're doing it because you're tired. At night you go to sleep because you are tired. That's a function of your body. Which normal people go to sleep at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? People who didn't sleep well at night. I said, a person had a good 8 hours of sleep every night. A normal, healthy person doesn't sleep in the day. Why do you say? So when does a person sleep when he's not tired? When he dies. When you sleep at night, that's still a body function. Do you understand? Your body is tired. Your body needs to rejuvenate. So you sleep. It's a body function. But if you decide in the middle of the day, I'm just going to take a nap. Well, I'm not tired. Then why? Because I'm just saying goodbye to this world. Then that's like death. Death is not going to sleep so you'll have strength when you get up later. You're not getting up. So that nap, the Shabbos nap, has many reasons. One of them is so you shouldn't fall asleep Friday night. You got to be up on Shabbos. So you need, on a simple level, you take a nap on Erev Shabbos, so Friday night your head doesn't fall into the soup. Right? What do most men do Friday night? During Kabbalah Shabbos, everybody's half asleep. Right? They fall asleep in Kabbalah Shabbos, and if somebody says a 5-minute Dvar Torah, you're for sure asleep in those 5 minutes. Why? Because the whole tiredness of the whole week is just coming over you. Then you come home, have some challah, a few carbs in the system, that puts you away. You're done. By the time the meal's done, you're done. That's the end of your Shabbos. Shabbos wasn't made to sleep. So if I take a 2-hour nap Friday afternoon, I'll be up Friday night. That's on a simple, practical, sensible thing to do. It would only make sense. Can you imagine if you go to a sporting event, you fall asleep in the middle of the game, you paid $300 for center court tickets, and you were tired, and you fall asleep in the middle of the game? What a waste. Fall asleep in the middle of Shabbos? What a waste. You got to make sure you don't fall asleep. That's on a practical, pragmatic level. But the deeper mystical level is sleep is death. What are you saying? You're saying, I got all these business problems. I got all these body issues, right? All these body. What makes us unhappy? It's the body issues, not the soul issues. How am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to take care of my workers? How am I going to this? How am I going to that? It's all body problems. Who has no body problems? Dead people. May he rest in peace. Do you worry about your acne when you're dead? Do you worry about the fact that you're overdrawn in the bank? Do you worry about you can't pay the mortgage? Dead people have nothing to worry about in those areas, at least. So as you're coming to Shabbos, you have to die. Do you understand? You have to existentially die. So I take a sleep for an hour. For that hour, I have no problems. And I get up, it's a resurrection of the dead. A resurrection of the dead. And now, I'm now entering the world to come. And now I put on a different garment. That's why even on a simple level, when a human being dies, what do we do with the human being? How do we bury the human being? What happened? The guy, let's say, wore a fancy tuxedo, got a heart attack and died. So what would we have to do? He's already dressed pretty nice. Just put him in a coffin and away he goes. That's not what we do in Judaism. What do? First we do a tahara. We purify the body, washing, like we talked about 2 weeks ago. And then we dress him in what? Shroud, what color? White. New garments.
In South Africa it was always a talit.
No, on top of that. A talis, but after the garment, for a man.
Yeah.
But the basic was the white shroud. Except it's a white shroud because we're not covering a body anymore.
So why the talis thing?
The talis, that's already, it's like it's our uniform. It's the spiritual uniform of a Jewish man. It's a spiritual uniform. So that's what we do to a dead person. So that's what we do while you're alive every week. You take a nap, you go to sleep, you're dead. You take the shower, it's the tahara. And now you put on the new clothes. And they bring down in certain Hasidic Sforim, your clothes on Shabbos should be white. You'll see certain Hasidim have all white clothes. Because remember, why white? What's the result of white? White is a color that reflects, doesn't take in. If you're in a hot climate, you wear white. Why? The heat doesn't go in. White does not take in, it only reflects. A neshama doesn't take in, it only gives. That's why when you dress the dead person in white, because he's not taking anymore. We wear colored clothing. Every type of color somehow absorbs some light. Takes. If you're a giver, you don't. So if the person's dead, he ain't taking anymore. I'm white. So you got to go to sleep. You have to die. Now that you die, what's your reality now? I'm an neshama. I'm an neshama. I have to wear special garments that an neshama wears. Now, in a perfect world, if we really were in Olam Haba, I would just wear my mitzvos. But since we're still under the spell of the first sin, and we still think to some extent we really are bodies, so to that extent if we go down in clothes it would not be modest. So we wear clothing, but clothing that are only worn on a day of the soul, to know that I am today a soul, and these are and that's why they're called the Bigdei Kavod, the clothes of honor, no different than a Kohen who works in the Beis Hamikdash. The rabbis say that the clothing, the Torah says, the clothing of a Kohen was Bigdei Kavod, honor. Why honor? Because we know a code word for the soul. Code word for soul, King David said, Lemani yizamercha chavod v'lo yidom, so that my kavod will sing and not be silent. That means your soul. Your soul is your kavod. The clothing of a Kohen were Bigdei Kavod, clothing of the soul. Because the Kohen in the Beis Hamikdash, we know Shabbos there's always three levels of everything. Everything has three dimensions: in soul, in place, and in time. Shabbos is in three places. In time, it's the seventh day of the week. In soul, it's the tzaddik. In place, it's the Beis Hamikdash. So the Kohen, who was a tzaddik also, but even not a tzaddik, in place he was in the Beis Hamikdash, and that's Shabbos. He lived in the Shabbos reality. So they had to wear clothing reflective of that, not the clothing they wore when they weren't working as Kohanim. To remember that we're engaged in soulful activities. So therefore, it's not, you understand why now, how long is Shabbos, the day of the soul? All 25 hours. Are you only a soul when you're in Shul? No, even when you're at home. Even at the dinner table. You're still a soulful individual who's eating food on Shabbos. So you have to wear your Shabbos clothing the entire 25 hours, you understand? The entire 25 hours you're wearing the Shabbos, because you're a soul for the entire 25 hours. And now you're wearing clothes that are reflecting who your true identity is. And just like I say, the clothes make the man, right? So, when a person, goes around the whole week, you got dirty clothes, you don't really care how you act, right? You're wearing a bunch of jeans and dirty dungarees, you sit on the floor, no? Now you put on a beautiful tuxedo, you're going to sit on the floor in a beautiful tuxedo? Passt nicht. Wearing a nice tuxedo, I got to watch myself. Clothes make the man. Yes, they do. But if you have to know who you are to begin with. When I'm living a soulful day, I wear clothes reflective of the soulful day. It reminds me it's a soulful day. I have to act accordingly. And therefore, you can't take your Shabbos clothes and wear them on Wednesday. Because if you're going to wear them on Wednesday, that means I can be a mundane person and wear these clothes, and these clothes aren't special anymore. And you certainly can't wear your clothes from Wednesday on Shabbos, because then you'd be chasing away your neshama. Your neshama says, do you realize you're neshama? Well, you're wearing weekday clothes. That doesn't seem to make any sense. Does this make sense? Now, of course, we know there's more aspects to wearing clothes. There's more aspects to wearing clothes. What about, don't clothes keep you warm? Do clothes keep you warm? What are the three functions of clothing? One is modesty. We already said that. Second, keep you warm. Third, honor and dignity. Honor and dignity. So when you're wearing Shabbos clothes, you're getting rid of all your weekday clothes, aren't you? So don't you have to stay warm on Shabbos? Don't you need to have modesty on Shabbos also? But aren't those lower level types of things? I mean, the tznius, the warmth was to not be ashamed of the first sin I did. And even the warmth, the only reason I'm cold is because I identify myself as a body. And if I identify myself as a body, I need to keep myself warm. But it seems I'm changing all the clothes. So somehow, it's not just on Shabbos, I focus on one aspect of my clothing, which is the honor that it's covering of a soul. But I can't forget I'm a body. What about the first two aspects? Aren't the clothes I'm going to wear on Shabbos keep me warm? Aren't the clothes I'm going to keep on Shabbos? What about shame? So rabbis say it is, but when a soul's putting things on, you elevate what you're doing. Let me explain. You could be physically cold. Now, how do clothes work? Do clothes themselves make you warm? When you put on a nice fur coat, does the fur coat make you warm? No. What makes you warm? Your body heat. Why are people cold? When the body heat dissipates. When you don't have any clothes on, you're going to be cold. You know why? There's nothing to hold the body heat. When you're going out in the winter, the most essential piece of clothing is a hat, because all the heat comes out of your head. Clothing just keeps now different types of clothing are better insulators. Wool is a better insulator than whatever, than polyester. That's why it keeps you warmer. It's only taking the heat that's there and keeping you warm. So on Shabbos, you need to wear clothes to stay warm, but there's a different heat you're trying to keep. When you realize that you're a neshama, the neshama itself has what we call a hitlahavut, an excitement, a drive. You're cooking in spirituality. You know, as they say in English, gekocht. You're boiling, you're mamish into it. You could have a prayer, a heartfelt prayer. There's heat, spiritual heat being generated. Shabbos is the day where the soul comes to you. The soul is coming in there. You got to bundle up warm to keep the spiritual heat inside. And if you put on a weekday clothing, you think it's a Wednesday. That soul comes into you, but there's nothing keeping the heat from dissipating. You wear a special garment. That special garment you only wear on Shabbos that says, I'm a soul, and you're cognizant of that, then that keeps the spiritual warmth inside the person. So what you normally need to be warm on a Wednesday because of the cold of the physicalness, you don't want to lose the body heat. On Shabbos, we don't want to lose the spiritual heat. And those clothes keep that heat in because you recognize in your soul you're not going to lose that. Even the aspect of tznius. We said there's tznius and shame of being uncovered. There's all other kinds of tznius as we talked about in past Parsha classes. The tznius of Rachel, the tznius of Tamar. We explained this week, tznius means it's not about me. As long as Hashem knows, it's enough. So when a person realizes his soul, there's a whole different level of tznius. It's not a question of tznius covering up your body to cover up the shame of your sin. That's true during the week, but there's a higher level of tznius. We are told that Hashem only reveals his deepest secrets to those who can keep secrets, to those who are tzadua. And Shabbos is a day, Hashem said to Moshe, Moshe, I have a beautiful treasure, my hidden treasure, and Shabbos is its name. Go tell the Jewish people about it. The mysteries of life, the deeper aspects of life are the secrets of life. Hashem only shares them with people who know how to keep secrets. People who know how to keep things to themselves. People who don't look for people to be noticed. That's a spiritual type of tznius. And that's a spiritual type of tznius that reflects in a neshama. A body needs its tznius not to be immodest. But the soul needs its tznius to keep it to itself, to share it only with Hashem. And that's why Shabbos is the day where you're just with Hashem. There's an aspect of tznius that the clothing give you there. So now that's the clothing. That's how the clothing makes. So there's expression in the world, clothing makes the man, yeah? On Shabbos, clothing makes the soul. It doesn't make the soul, but it makes you aware of the soul. And makes you a soulful person. You become the soul because it reminds you that I'm wearing a different garment now. It's a different garment. And when you put on that garment? Before Shabbos. Before Shabbos. And then when do you take it off? There's 3 opinions when you take it off. How long do you keep it on? The the minimal opinion is till after Havdalah. A lot of people, they take a nap Shabbos afternoon, then they just put on a regular sports jacket for Mincha, Chas v'Shalom. It's still Shabbos, still Day of the Soul. The highest level of Day of the Soul is at the end of Shabbos. It's the highest level. So for sure you have to keep it on at least till Havdalah. Others say until after Malav Malka, And finally, others say until you go to sleep and take off your clothes completely, and that's when you take off the Shabbos clothes. But you understand why Melava Malka? Melava Malka means you're escorting the queen. Escorting always is connoted with protecting and watching and guarding. There's a mitzvah to have guests, and when a guest leaves, you're Malava, you escort them out. What you're trying to do when Shabbos is over and you understood, you put clothing of honor and dignity that was the clothing of a priest, and you realize that you are a soulful person, and that really, really, really what should be covering you? Your mitzvahs. And one day there will only be your mitzvahs covering you. But I have to have some kind of a token garment that reflects the mitzvahs that I should be doing. But you don't want that message to stop on Shabbos. You want to keep warm the whole week, so you keep those clothes on as you go into the next week. As you go into the next week saying, I wish I could be the Talmud Chacham who wears Shabbos clothes 7 days a week. But I'm not on that level yet. But I would like to carry my look at life that I'm always looking from a soulful perspective. So you try to encroach 3, 4, 5 hours into the weekday and with the Shabbos clothes. And saying, I'm still not yet dirtying myself. I'm still not yet cooking in the kitchen yet. I'm still reflecting the true essence of who I am, and that's why you wear the Shabbos clothes even that far. So that gives you the jump start, as we said before, that the Shabbos glow can keep you spiritual through Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's for keeping those clothes on at least for a couple hours after Shabbos, to make all that have that focus. So there you see the aspect of Shabbos clothing. It's not a small thing. One day you'll all wear Shabbos clothing. When you leave this world, you're going to all wear Shabbos clothing. The trick is to be smart and to have those Shabbos clothing on before, because at the end of the day, you better have clothes to wear when you come to the next world. There's a concept called naked souls. People who spend their whole life not doing any mitzvahs and not garmenting their souls at all. Can you imagine how embarrassing it's going to be when you come to Shemayim and everybody's got their royal clothes on and you're naked? Why? Because you always thought you were a body. And now the soul never got garmented at all. And if anything, all you have is dirty, filthy clothes to wear in Shemayim. So Shabbos is reminding you that it's going to be that day. Let's start taking advantage of that day right now. So tomorrow, when you're going to put on your Shabbos clothes, after you take your Shabbos shluff, if you can do all that, and say, I'm really garmenting myself as if I'm going to the next world. And really, really what you're garmenting yourself is, what mitzvahs did I do this week? Start thinking of the mitzvahs you did. Although I have a physical nice suit that I only wear on Shabbos. So when you put the suit on, you say, now what mitzvahs did I do that are garmenting me? And that's the pleasure of what the Shabbos that I'm surrounding myself with. And you start that a little bit before Shabbos, and you keep that on the whole Shabbos, and keep that focus of who you are. And the Mir Hashem, if you do that, you're able to carry that focus through the week, and to really have that taste of Shabbos.
Rabbi, why is it on Shabbos, if you eat tolerant and you dirty your tie, you're not allowed to...
Can't clean the tie, because that's a malacha. That's one of the 39 prohibited activities. So you change the tie and wear another nice tie.
Can you put on an apron?
Put an apron. You have to, first of all, you have to make sure not to get dirty. You should really, Shabbos, you should be more careful not to get yourself dirty. Okay, you're human, you make a mistake, but it's a prohibited, washing is a prohibited activity on Shabbos. You can't do anything. So you better have everyone should have a backup Shabbos suit. What happens if your Shabbos suit gets by? You're walking in the street, a car goes by and splashes mud all over you. You have to change, obviously. So you have to have another pair of Shabbos clothes.